You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a new show, a new day here, October the 24th, 2023. It is Tuesday, and we're here live on CKLU 96.7 FM and live at cklu.ca online. Click on the Radio Player Canada app. You can stream us. You can also download it, take us with you, and listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device. We're also live streaming at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. And make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, all that stuff with the social medias. We're also on other social media. We're on X. And, it doesn't seem like a lot of people from Sudbury use X, formerly Twitter. But we throw our Sudbury News Talk show on there each and every day. As soon as it's done, I go right away and post it onto Twitter. And thinking of other things we could do on Twitter and other social medias, hard as when it's just you doing it and pretty much volunteer, and it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. But anyways, follow our social medias, like them, subscribe, all those things. And on the show, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can comment. So we encourage you to comment because this is your show. I'm facilitating a conversation and talking about the news. It's your views and my views on the news that is Greater Sudbury's news, along with regional, provincial, federal, and international news and issues that we touch on and talk about that affect us. If something or an issue is going to somehow affect us now or in the future, we will discuss it. And a lot of times people don't agree on an issue or agree on how to act in accordance to an issue or what to do about certain things and take action. And so we don't agree. But at the same time, when we hear different views and different suggestions from different people from different walks of life, it tends to add color and texture to possible solutions to the very complicated, complex, layered world that we live in. Things aren't as they seem always. And we'll get into that a little bit today. We have some there was a town hall meeting in Cape Real last night. Councillor Natalie Labby and the mayor met in Cape Real and talked about all kinds of things. I got the last half of it. I knew about it ahead of time and then caught me by surprise. And thankfully, Greater Sudbury's website is not considered news. So I was able to have it shared with me as I was going through Facebook. And that's the great thing about things being able to be shared to help us understand the world in which we live, because I wouldn't have remembered, but because it was allowed by law to be shared still on Facebook, it just came right up and I was like, yes, I forgot about this meeting and now I can participate virtually. And it was really good. I was impressed with Mayor Paul Lefebvre and his comments. I was impressed with Natalie Labby and her comments. Did I agree with everything? No. But was it productive? I think yes. I think there were some good questions there, and we'll talk a little bit about those when we come back after this. And just to remind everyone, we're going to have 3 city councillors on the show tomorrow. Pauline Fortin, Mike Parent, and Natalie Labby, all on the show. And, we're not going to drill them with tough questions on this show tomorrow. However, we're hoping to have this be the beginning of a dialogue open with our elected officials here in the city So that way, in subsequent shows, we can then pose some more questions. But this is kind of like a meet and greet for everybody with them. I know Natalie's been on the show before. Mike's been on a few times. First time Pauline will be on tomorrow. And but anyways, it's I think hopefully the beginning of something really cool, never before seen in the city, as we can just on this daily show at the drop of a dime just say, hey, can you come on and speak to this issue? And it's a direct line. And I think dialogue and communication is important. And that's why we started this in the first place, is to open a conversation. Not that I'm the foremost authority on news. That's not why I started this. It's to discuss the news. It's to open it up. It's to try and understand what's going on. It's not to just report like a talking head, something that was written for me by someone who doesn't even understand the situation, mostly themselves, leaving out a lot of facts. We'll leave that to paid individuals to do that. Anyways, we're going to dive right in. We got lots to talk about. News headlines locally. Faulkner from True North News and his own show called Ray Showed poignantly points out that MAID is going to be coming for you, medical assistance in dying, coming for you March the 24th, I think, 2024, something like that. It's opened up and opening up to all kinds of people. And you thought it was just here for the people that were really suffering, and just a few people. However, he'll be able to open your eyes and make some connections between that and our harm reduction philosophy that we have, and the fact that they want to include people that are addicted to drugs with medical assistance in dying. Who knew? Who could have thought of that? Anyways, so we'll make that connection a little bit later in a deep dive. Maybe we'll have a follow-up in terms of climate change. I'll let you know some of the issues, national and also community issues that I think are important, that I had my finger on the pulse, and the list is growing. I'm just going to let you know the beginnings of the list of things we need to be looking out for in our country and in our community to make sure that we don't go down a slippery slope. But anyways, all that right after the weather, and we'll be back with your comments and all the news headlines and a deep dive right after this. Okay, so Sudbury weather brought to you by sudburyweather.ca. Currently it is 6 degrees Celsius. It's mostly cloudy. There is a special weather statement currently, and I saw this this morning. Lots of rain headed our way, possibly. Heavy rain possible today into Wednesday. I'm surprised they didn't call it a heavy rain event. This is the new verbiage these days. It's a heavy rain event. I'm surprised they didn't call it that. But anyways, hazards, total rainfall amounts 30 to 50 millimeters. Locally higher amounts possible, particularly in thunderstorms. So the timing will be late this morning into Wednesday afternoon. The rain, along with frontal boundary, will move into the area late this morning or early afternoon, and is expected to continue through Wednesday afternoon. Rainfall amounts, again, 50 could be exceeding 50 millimeters in areas affected by thunderstorms. Another round of heavy rain is possible late Thursday over areas near Lake Superior. For information concerning flooding, please consult your local conservation authority or Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources Forestry Office. And anyways, go to Environment Canada. You can click on the link there, or you can go to sudbury.news on the weather and click on that, and it should have the weather statement there. Yeah, so not cool. So again, today cloudy. Periods of rain beginning this afternoon. Risk of a thunderstorm this afternoon. It says local amount 5 to 10 millimeters, but they're saying it could exceed 50 millimeters of rain. Winds will be gusting to 40. High today, 13 degrees. Tonight, periods of rain, risk of thunderstorm, 10 to 28 millimeters of rain. And the temperature will stay steady. near 13. Wednesday, rain, local amount 10 to 15 millimeters. Wind will be moderate, and the temperature will be about 14 degrees tomorrow. So again, rain, 14 degrees for tomorrow. Chance of showers again, 60% on Thursday, high of 12. Periods of rain on Friday, high of 13. Chance of rain, showers, or flurries on Saturday. It's a 30% chance. 40% chance of showers on Sunday, high of 2. 30% chance of showers on Monday, high of 3. Oh, looks like one of the wettest weeks we've ever forecasted in our week forecast segment. So this taken at 3 a.m. You can see all the cloud cover. There is, however, a little circle of clearing just north of us, north of the Sioux, south of Timmins, north of Sudbury, making a little circle. But that's at 3 a.m. So you never know. You might see some clearing, and that would be where it is. Other than that, you can see the activity coming in over Thunder Bay. It's going to cross the Lake Superior and hit us later this afternoon. So make sure to keep your finger on the pulse for that and take whatever precautions you need to for the heavy rain and a rainy week, for that matter, forecasted to be anyways. That's your Sudbury weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. We'll be back with your comments, news headlines, and much more right after this. Okay, and welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. It's going to be a great show. Hopefully you stay for the rest. It looks like Monique is the first to the party on Facebook this morning. Good morning, Sudbury. Hand clapping emoji, I believe. Yes, it's exciting, even though going to have a lot of rain and possibly bad weather. We can still be in a good mood. Good morning, Judy. Nice to see you. And Jerome as well. How's it going, eh? Nice Canadian good morning salutation. Maurice, I'm doing fine, and I hope you are too. To answer your question. Maurice, good morning. Heart emoji. Good morning, Maurice. Good morning, Marianne. From Barrie, always great to have you joining us from Barrie. And as our community expands around the area and around the world, liked and shared. Thank you very much, Marianne. Good morning, Claire. Speaking of somebody who likes and shares the video often, thank you so much, Claire. Thanks for being with us. Jerome, it's all about perspective. That's true. Maybe they could answer why they allowed and participated in perpetuate, or why they allowed, participated in, perpetuated the COVID lie and supported the $800,000 a year, $8 billion a year pharmaceutical minions. I hope I got that number right. Anyways, it's a lot of money. The pharmaceutical companies do make lots of money. We all know that, whether you're on the side of them or not. They make lots of money. It's a fact, right? They make oodles, more money than you and me and everyone on this show combined, times probably 1 million. That's how much money they make. Okay, good morning, Denise. Thanks for being with us. Jerome, did you look up yesterday at the unique traffic directions? No, I didn't. Oh, air traffic directions. No. Did you look up yesterday the unique air traffic directions? I did not. And now you got me curious. If you wanted to message me, I'd appreciate it. If you have something that needs to be looked at. I'm always about, being in the know, let's say. Monique, good rising. Good rising, Monique. Thanks for being with us, Monique. And Victoria, good morning. Thanks for being with us as well. So let's talk about right off the bat. We have an announcement about road closure. Highway 17 is closed from Massey to Espanola. The MTO reports an overnight collision. Now, this is coming on the heels, I think, of last Friday. There was one as well, and there was a fatality. The road was closed from Webwood to Espanola. backing up traffic for a long time. And unfortunately, there was a fatality. And so, again, the road is closed from Massey to Espanola this morning. So if for some reason you know anyone who's traveling or you're traveling yourself, keep that in mind. And just thought I'd let everybody know that. That's coming from Sudbury.com, the one and only news source that's not being aggregated into our Sudbury.news website for whatever reason. We don't know whether it's a glitch, it's a mistake, we're not sure whether it's on purpose. We don't know. It is what it is. But I'll go out and grab your news, I guess, to be able to share it free of charge on the show every morning. Alleged thief caught in the act was wanted on dozens of warrants. I shared this. It was a media release from the police yesterday. Greater Sudbury Police say an alleged thief made things easy for them when officers responded to a break and enter in progress at a business on Regent Street, October the 20th. When officers arrived just after 8:15 p.m., they reported finding a back window of the business smashed out and the thief in process of attempting to flee the scene. This is a quote from the news release. Officers quickly took the individual into custody, they said, and the man faces 5 charges from the Regent Street incident. But police also discovered this, and this is important. He was wanted on an outstanding bench warrant in relation to more than 30 property-related crimes, as well as additional 4 arrest warrants for break and enter, and 7 charges for failing to comply with a release order. Now, we see this a lot in our justice system these days. We see people who commit multiple crimes being let back out to commit more multiple crimes, and it just seems to be a revolving door, and we're wondering why. We don't know. It's multiple offenses that these individuals are committing. It seems to be the same individuals committing 80% of the crimes kind of thing. It's a small group of people. And if they were dealt with properly and kept from continually committing more crimes, our crime statistics would go down, obviously. And you would think that's what there's a justice system for. Something's wrong. Something smells not right about the way we go about things. And Sudbury really needs all information for a better future ahead. That's for sure, Claire. We're doing our best. And Jerome says traffic has become so aggressive. It's true. And I think it's become so aggressive, traffic. That's talking about the road closure between Massey and Espanola this morning. As driving in Toronto over the weekend, and just driving locally, people don't really know the laws of the road. First of all, speed is one thing. Speeding is one thing. There's speed limits. That's one thing you could know, but is that the only thing you need to know to drive? Can you turn right on a red light in Sudbury? That's a question for everyone. Can you turn right on a red light in Sudbury? Yes, you can. You can turn right on a red light in Sudbury, unless it's posted otherwise, right? But I'll be sitting beside somebody with their right signal light on, and there's nobody coming, and they're waiting for the light to turn for a long time in Sudbury. So a little, I wish I had a, excuse me, horn, but you don't. It just makes the same noise. So you try to do it really lightly for somebody, and you say, hey, you can turn right. So there's a lot of people that don't know one little thing like that. How about which lanes are for what? Do we know that? People drive the same speed side by side for a long period of time. Do they not know that one lane is for someone to go around somebody, and then you go in the other lane? If you see someone behind you and you could go in the lane, the shoulder of the road on the right, you go there and you let the person by. And many people will just stay there going, no, I'm going the speed limit and I'm not letting you go by because there's some kind of authority or some kind of moral high superior, person that's going to make the decision that they're going to control how you drive. There's a lot of psychology in driving. I don't know if you've noticed that. Driving is a psychological thing. And driving is an extension of how we feel a lot of times. Is whether you honk at someone, if you see them do something wrong, you're going to judge them and say, look, you're wrong. We do a lot of this on the road. Give someone the finger, flip them the bird if we don't like what they do. And we're all safe behind this glass and steel and rubber. We feel safe and confined, and we can do things like that to other people. The zipper. We don't understand the zipper in Sudbury. We don't understand it. It's two cars. One car from one lane goes and another car from the other lane goes. Period. That's simple. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Done. Why? We don't understand it. Who's teaching these things? I think if we're all about inclusion and diversity and teaching people genders, which gender they should be, how much more important is driving and safety and dying on the roads with people who don't understand the unwritten rules, let's say, or the written rules of the road, etiquette, if you will. There's so much to know about driving, and then people get frustrated. So someone needs to get where they're going in a hurry, and then someone in front of them is not abiding by road etiquette. There's two people driving side by side, going the exact speed limit, and one person isn't courteous enough to just allow the other person to pass, to go a little bit over the speed limit, nothing, dangerous, just so they can, everyone can get along and everyone can do their thing and be courteous to each other. But again, we use the road as an extension of our morality or our ethics to teach other people certain things or whatever, and I don't understand that. It's interesting. Someone should do studies into psychology of drivers and how they act on the road and why they do it, and we would understand it more, and we'd be able to try to help it along, because traffic flow is huge for our society, not only for the economy, but just for people's well-being. Get to where you need to go and don't be inhibited. Okay, so catch and release policy from the Liberal Party, talking about the criminal justice system. That's true. Some people need to go redo their license because they have horrible driving practices. Many would fail the retest. I'm sure you got that right for sure. David, good morning. Take care. Stay safe. Thanks for joining us, David, and I hope that you're on track with your recovery. All the best there. So there you go. Now this is interesting. Sudden resignation of Robinson Huron. Justice leaves questions, right? So was Justice Harry Laforme, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, fired, or did he resign? These are but two questions swirling around the $10 billion Robinson-Huron Treaty settlement. Justice Harry Laforme resigned from the Robinson-Huron Treaty Litigation Funds Office of the Mizanwe last month, shortly after he submitted an interim report. It's unclear if or how the contents of that report created the circumstances that led to his resignation, which was the result of community information sessions detailing the recent announcement of the $10 billion settlement. Now, the previous confidential interim report has been leaked to Sudbury.com. We have independently verified the report we received is the actual report filed by him. He submitted this interim report detailing his community information sessions on August the 25th and sent his resignation letter September 9th. But did he resign? Okay, so that's true. We don't know. That's a lot of money, and there's a lot of, temptation there, or in our society, when there's that much money around, there's a lot of people that, let's say, corruption, if we will use the word, possible corruption. I need to always be aware that that's possible, because there's a lot of temptation with that much money for people to try and to get it. And that's why transparency is so important in politics, especially the financial aspect of it, which we have very little of it in municipal, provincial, or federal, or in any government for that matter around the world. Very limited transparency. And people would always benefit from that. So anyways, we'll find out more on that as the days come. Laurentian, recently coming out of bankruptcy, approves the 2022-2023 financials with a $52.6 million surplus. So they're doing pretty well post-bankruptcy. Laurentian University is reporting surplus of $52.6 million for the financial year of 22-23, a year which the university still spent it was still partially in insolvency. The university's Board of Governors approved the 22-23 financial statements audited by the financial firm BDO at their October 20th meeting. And you can actually view this in their board package. It's on page 119. Universities must submit their financial statements from the previous fiscal year to the province and post them publicly by the end of this month. Speaking of transparency, that's a great thing to do to help with transparency, I would think. Laurentian exited insolvency under the company's creditors agreement November the 28th, 22. After 22 months under creditor protection, the university posted the deficit of $66.7 million in 2021 and a surplus of $16.8 million in 21-22. So that's your Laurentian University coming out of insolvency. And now, something that we've had happening here in the city is the city is not going to be giving any more funding to the safe injection site nicknamed or called The Spot here in town. And that's controversial. They're waiting for funding from the provincial government, and then they put it on hold. Well, it was on hold even before it was officially on hold. Weren't sure why. Were they playing politics? Did they not agree with the type of, the harm reduction ideology? Not sure. But they said they were going to help. They didn't. The city pitched in money, and now the city can't keep funding it if they don't get other funds. Many people are going to be losing their jobs. Safe consumption, harm reduction. The words sound amazing. They sound good. It's, like a lot of things sound good, but are they really good? Is it the best way to fight our opioid crisis that we have? Okay, so Miles says $56 million in surplus must be the budgets of the men's and women's hockey teams that were canceled. Many things canceled. Hopefully we'll have some things come back, and that's speaking of Laurentian University. But and then another kind of sports-related thing says piles of trash left at the Sudbury Arena. So after the game on Friday night, some hockey families, they're speaking out after arriving at the Sudbury Community Arena on Saturday for a game to find piles of trash left in the stands from the night before. So not sure why someone hasn't cleaned it up or whatever. And a big question at last night's meeting was, what about the new arena? And I went back to play the video. The video won't play. It keeps halting. And so I wanted to give you Paul LaFave's answer to the new arena. Basically said in a nutshell, they're really looking at the best possible solution for taxpayers. If they build new, they want to make sure they're going to recoup the costs and it's not burdensome for taxpayers. And the same thing, if renovations are the right solution, then if it's the best solution for taxpayers and the city, they're going to try and do the right thing, which I appreciated. And they put the city in charge of doing a study to come back with the pros and the cons of doing either thing, which I think is really, really smart. So I wanted to play that, but the video wasn't playing. And Claire saying, going back to the harm reduction, safe injection, is they need rehabilitation from drug use, and that is true. I believe. Why would you want to just enable somebody, right? The harm reduction site has helped. There are stats that say so. Okay, and that's great. So, and I do believe it has helped people, and it has saved. The executive director said as many as 6 lives during its time that it's been open, which again, right, if someone's overdosing, you're able to help them right there. And that's true. It's part of the solution, but it's not the solution. And so if it's just going to stand alone there, I don't think it's helping anybody on the way to recovery. That's for sure. And the individuals responsible for bankruptcy of the university are sipping on their lattes. Thanks, Jerome. Much appreciated. That is true. Okay, so Jerome wants some of the stats from the harm reduction, how it saved lives. And again, stats are interesting, right? But as Faulkner goes into this, just pay attention to what he says. Connect some, I think some dots are being connected. There's a larger picture that's going on here. It's connected to the medical assistance in dying ideology that's going to be made law for people suffering from mental illness in March of 2024. It was already supposed to be instituted. They held it back. They said, no, we'll put it off for a year. So I have people that are very close for me that suffer very greatly from mental illness. And they have highs and lows. And I know they have lows where they contemplate taking their own lives. And that's when we go into, as family members and friends, into support mode more than ever. We do it always anyways, but we don't say, well, maybe you should take your own life as a solution, where medical assistance in dying will be doing that for people suffering from mental illness. And they want to include people who are addicted to drugs. Now, can you see a connection with the safe consumption site? So they want to include that into medical assistance in dying. Oh, you're having trouble with your addiction. You can't get over it. Well, you could just do this medical procedure and it would take away all your pain forever. And again, that sounds really terrible. And it sounds like I'm making the stuff up, but I'm not. And that's what's scary. And that's what you need to be aware of. And it needs to be shouted from the rooftop, so to speak. Anyways, Harrison Faulkner will have more on this. And so pay attention to his reporting. I think he does a fabulous job here. He connects some dots. We'll be back right after this.
In just a few short months from now, Canada is set to permit Canadians whose sole medical condition is mental illness to apply to the government to take their own life at the hands of the state via a lethal injection. As you all know, the Canadian government calls this MAID, medical assistance in dying. But in order for that to make sense, one must accept the premise that death is an appropriate medical procedure for severe cases of mental illness. If that isn't enough to convince you that the people in charge of our country have all but given up on the most vulnerable people in our society, our countrymen, our neighbors who are silently struggling and barely getting by, what I'm about to tell you next is even worse. When Canada expands euthanasia to the mentally ill in March of 2024, it looks increasingly likely that the Canadian government is also going to expand euthanasia to people who are addicted to drugs. This was being discussed last week at a conference in British Columbia hosted by the Canadian Society of Addiction Medicine. It's painfully ironic that the only newsworthy thing to come out of this Canadian Society of Addiction Medicine conference were public calls to allow drug-addicted Canadians to kill themselves at the hands of the state. As many have pointed out, this is all beginning to look a lot like eugenics. The state being able to pick and choose which Canadian lives are of value and which Canadian lives are worth saving and which Canadian lives are permitted to end if that person chooses that path. The government is doing everything it can to get people addicted to drugs and to keep them addicted to drugs, and also now they're offering to take their lives once they get addicted to drugs. Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: should Canada allow for people who are addicted to drugs to apply for euthanasia? Let me know in the comments and let's get into it. Canada will legalize medically assisted dying for people addicted to drugs. That is the dystopian headline coming from Vice News of all places, which has gone viral around the world. That's because for quite some time now, the world has been looking at Canada and the MAID regime under this Liberal government with absolute disgust and shock at what they're seeing. When euthanasia became legal in Canada in 2016, just over 1,000 Canadians applied for the quote-unquote procedure, applied for death. By 2021, the last year that we have for available data when it comes to MAID, more than 10,000 Canadians took their own lives at the hands of the state via a lethal injection. For context, in 2021, MAID was the 7th leading cause of death in Canada. More Canadians died from MAID in 2021 than they did from liver disease, diabetes, pneumonia, Alzheimer's, and influenza. Now, in news that will surprise nobody, it turns out that the loudest advocates to expand MAID to include the people who are addicted to drugs are also the same people who proudly promote the policies of so-called harm reduction and safer supply. Harm reduction policies to solve the opioid and toxic drug crisis are policies that include supervised safe injection sites and clean needle exchange programs. Supervised injection sites are exactly what the name says they are, a place where addicts can take their illegal drugs in front of taxpayer-funded officials who will revive the addicts if they are overdosing. Safe supply, on the other hand, is where addicts can get hydromorphone, a more potent heroin alternative, which acts as a safer opioid alternative which won't kill the user. Thanks to reporting from journalists like Adam Zivo, we know that the Safe Supply Hydromorphone program from the government is actually fueling a black market fentanyl trade. Addicts are not taking the hydromorphone, but instead getting it for free and flipping it on the street to younger people, getting those younger Canadians addicted to drugs and into the dangerous death cycle of addiction. Spearheaded by the federal government, so-called harm reduction and safe supply programs usually go hand in hand with drug decriminalization, as we have seen in British Columbia. In May of 2022, the federal government allowed British Columbia to decriminalize the possession of hard drugs. This was in response to the absolutely devastating opioid and toxic drug crisis taking thousands of British Columbian lives a year. In fact, in 2016, British Columbia declared a state of emergency. How has drug decriminalization, harm reduction, and safe supply been working in British Columbia? Well, let's just say, not very good. British Columbia right now is on track to set the highest number of toxic drug deaths in the province's history. In the first 7 months of 2023, over 1,400 British Columbians have died due to toxic drug overdoses. And since a state of emergency was declared in 2016, over 12,000 British Columbians have died due to overdose. According to the CBC, unregulated drug toxicity is the leading cause of death in British Columbia for persons aged 10 to 59, accounting for more deaths than homicides, suicides, accidents, and natural diseases combined. The other hotbed for overdose deaths in Canada, Toronto, wants to take British Columbia's drug policies one step further. Toronto has asked the federal government to grant the city an exemption to decriminalize the possession of all hard drugs of any amount for almost any age. And to show you where the federal, provincial, and municipal governments are at when it comes to solving this problem versus just perpetuating the issues and making everyone else addicted to drugs, this should show you what you need to know. In 2017 and 2019, Toronto put forward their overdose strategy plan. This, of course, involves reliance on safe supply and harm reduction policies, which, as we've seen in British Columbia, have done absolutely nothing to stop the insane spike in deaths we're seeing. Meanwhile, when it comes to having a mental health and addictions policy in Toronto, a policy to actually solve the problem, well, there isn't one. In April of 2023, the Toronto Board of Health finally got around to asking the Chief Public Health Officer of the city to come up with a mental health and addictions policy. That policy is still not available. Now, you might think that organizations in Canada whose sole job is to keep Canadians who are struggling with mental illness alive and functioning would be telling the federal government to stop this encroachment on MAID and euthanasia immediately. To say to the federal government that expanding MAID to people whose sole condition is mental illness is a destructive policy. But if you did think that, you'd be wrong. For example, when the federal government introduced Bill C-7, a bill to pause the expansion of MAID to include the mentally ill in Canada for 1 year, The Canadian Psychiatric Association told the federal government that their decision to pause MAID to include the mentally ill was unconstitutional and discriminatory. You might think they would be telling the government that actually expanding MAID to include the mentally ill is unconstitutional and discriminatory, but no, it was their decision to stop it from happening right away that the Canadian Psychiatric Association really took issue with. If you thought that was concerning, you should also know that on February 15th, the parliamentary body in charge of debating and discussing the expansion of MAID recommended to the federal government that MAID be expanded to include, quote, mature minors whose death is, quote, reasonably foreseeable. Mature minors to be able to apply for euthanasia. Oh, and at one of these parliamentary committee meetings, a doctor from the Quebec College of Physicians also recommended that infants and babies who with severe deformations and limited chance of survival should also be eligible for MAID, for euthanasia.
These minors could, with their tutors or parental parent, could make a request for MAID based on the level of persistent and intolerable suffering that they may experience and become unmanageable and senseless. The same for babies from 0 to 1 years of age who are born with severe deformations, very grave and severe syndromes, medical syndromes, whose life expectancy and level of suffering are such that it would make sense to ensure that they do not suffer.
In fact, we're now so beyond the realm of normal that we have clothing retailers like Simon's putting together ads that promote euthanasia.
Last breaths are sacred. When I imagine my final days, I see music. I see the ocean. I see cheesecake. Even now, as I seek help to end my life, with all the pain, and in these final moments, there is still so much beauty. You just have to be brave enough to see it.
Somehow, I guess this is also supposed to encourage people to shop at Simon's. I want to show you all some conflicting public opinion data on this issue, on the issue of expanding MAID to people whose sole condition is mental illness. The activist group Dying with Dignity, whose purpose is to rapidly expand euthanasia to include as many people, it appears, as possible, put together a poll with Ipsos, a polling firm, and let me just say that the public opinion data they have is downright disturbing. Apparently, 80% of Canadians support access to MAID for those suffering solely from a severe mental illness, which is relatively unchanged from last year. 71% of Canadians support the ability for mature minors to request and be considered eligible for MAID, providing they meet all criteria under the law. And 8 in 10, or 78% of Canadians, support the removal of the reasonably foreseeable eligibility requirement from the MAID law. Meanwhile, an Angus Reid poll shows that 51% of Canadians oppose expanding MAID to people whose sole condition is mental illness. As David Brooks in The Atlantic put it, we're now seeing what liberalism to its absolute extreme looks like. As he writes in his piece in The Atlantic, once the equal and infinite dignity of all human life is compromised, everything is up for grabs. Suddenly, debates arise over which lives are worth living. Suddenly, you have a couple of doctors at the Quebec College of Physicians pushing the envelope even further, suggesting that babies with severe deformations and limited chances of survival be eligible for medically assisted death. Suddenly, people who are ill or infirm are implicitly encouraged to feel guilty for wanting to live. Human dignity, once inherent in life itself, is measured by what a person can contribute, what level of happiness she is deemed capable of enjoying, how much she costs. It feels as though instead of bringing Canadians back from the ledge, instead of offering to help them recover, instead of telling them that their life matters and there's a value to their life in this country, the government is simply nudging them off. What have we come to? All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratioed.
Okay, so he was able to put that into, bite-sized pieces for everybody. Hopefully everyone was able to understand where we're heading with MAID, what it means. How do you think your life could be affected? Could it be affected where one of your children or brother or sister or anybody that you know and love and care about, a friend, might end up at the wrong side of this particular legislation? We are here. We're here now. When my wife and I got the news back from an ultrasound that our child was going to be severely deformed, our second child, the first thing the doctor said when we met with the specialist was, "Have you considered abortion?" And yeah, no. And then they continued to strongly suggest that we do that because it would affect our lives in a bad way, and it would be bad for the child, and the child's going to go through some undue suffering. And is that right even for the child? So these are big questions, right? And for us, the answer was simple. This is our child. They're meant to be in this world, or they wouldn't have been formed in the first place in my wife's womb. And they deserve the right to live just as much as I do. And who am I to say it's going to affect my life in a bad way? And I don't know enough to know that their life is going to be the suffering that they're going to incur. And the doctor couldn't even say. He said, "We don't know. So instead of taking a chance, just take your baby's life." So this is the medical system that we're in, and they make decisions like that. And having our daughter born was one of the best things that ever happened to us. And challenging as it was, which it was, why would we want to avoid challenges? Why would her life and the fact that it was going to be challenging to us, why would we want to end her life so that we wouldn't incur challenges in our lives? What if for some reason there was some divine plan, hoping that the challenges that would come to us from her were going to be beneficial to us in our lives and much needed for us? And when I say divine, I mean from God, whatever you believe in God to be, whether it's the universe or right down to a specific being with a specific name. I would be playing God if I would to take that life away from somebody. It's not mine to take. As not normal of a life she was going to have, in a very short life. She lived about a year and a half, and it was one of the most rewarding year and a halves for my wife and I and family that we could have asked for. We took care of her in our home with the help of people and organizations like Easter Seals. Great organization. Can't say enough good about them. And a huge blessing. Anyone who came in contact with Sarah, which was her name, their life was enriched. She couldn't talk. She couldn't even eat. She had to be fed by a feeding tube. And she ended up being diagnosed with a fatal form of dwarfism, a very rare fatal form of dwarfism. And so her organs continued to grow while her skeleton stayed as an infant. And so she eventually suffered asphyxiation. And that's how she passed away. Interesting story. We went to the funeral home after her death. And Lougheeds, and bless their hearts, they're nice people. Joffrey, we met with him, and we're wondering which room. We're trying to decide which room she's going to be in the facility. And so obviously she's an infant. She only lived about a year and a half. And so we're going to give her the smaller room because she didn't really get to know very many people and she didn't live that much of a life. So her funeral is probably going to be small with the attendance and whatever. And so there's an 80-year-old person or in his 80s and he's lived a full life and whatever. And his funeral is going to be on the same day. So we'll put him right next door in the big room because he's going to have a lot of people coming. And on the day of the funeral, there was a lineup outside the funeral, outside, coming in, not only just outside the room, but outside the funeral home, going past the flower shop, of people wanting to come in and show their respects for little Sarah. And if I would have made that decision to snuff out her life even before it happened, how many people who attended that day whose lives were touched by her wouldn't have been touched? And ironically, the man who lived to be about 80 years old, he had a handful of people come for his service. I don't know what that means. I don't know. It's just the fact that someone who's lived an 80-year life, regular life, normal, he had a handful of people come to pay respects to him after his life. But here's this baby, and the lineup was down the street. They were perplexed. At Lougheed's, they said, wow, did we ever call this one wrong? You know. And so, no, I'm not in favor of MAID. I'm not in favor of playing God. I think it's a slippery slope. I think once you make the argument for one thing, and I said this way back in the day, it was, it's only for people with extreme suffering. And I went, yeah, that's just not the way it works. It'll be people with extreme suffering, then, well, what about this? That's suffering too. And then what about this? And then eventually we're killing drug addicts and we're killing people with mental illness and we're killing people with deformities and we're killing people that aren't quote unquote normal and going to cause undue harm or, challenges to people around them because they're not living a normal life. Let's just kill them. Right? So that's where we are now. That's when you let something go and people say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist or something like that. When you think, you just look in history and you see how history can repeat itself. And then you look for those dangers and you try to stop them from happening again. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. So now once you've opened the door, which we have, we will now have the results of that. Right? It's all the time we got for today. I wanted to play a climate change video. But anyways, so you see, this is a huge topic. One of many huge topics that's going on. I'm putting together a list of things that just they're huge in terms of your standard of living and in terms of your life and quality of life. MAID is huge. Medical assistance dying. We see what it's going to start doing. We see what they're pushing for. Why they are, you'd have to ask that question of yourself. Why are they so hungry to kill people? I don't know. Anyways, so that's one thing. Corruption in government and transparency. I just watched a video of how the Liberal NDP coalition just used our law to their benefit to stop the head of the RCMP from testifying on why they are going to investigate the Prime Minister. That was just yesterday. That probably won't be in the news. So corruption and transparency is huge. Do you notice any non-transparency? Would you rather have more transparency? Do you notice corruption because there isn't enough transparency? The media, I haven't even put that to this. The things that are going on with the attack on media, that's huge. Harm reduction, drug addiction, homelessness, that type of thing. Climate change, climate taxes. What the heck? Is that the right thing to do? We're taxed over. Someone said to me the other day, someone did a study of the days of Robin Hood, where Robin Hood comes from, the story, where he was taking from the rich to give to the poor. We're taxed more if you do all the calculations of the economy and what our dollar is worth and all that stuff. We're taxed more now than they were in the days of Robin Hood. That just gives you an example. So the economy, hyperinflation is huge. This communistic ideology that's creeping in, that's taking over our country, that's huge, and you need to be aware of that, because that's all these dots are connected with that. The diversity and inclusion, I would say myth, that it's not inclusive to all people. It's just a Trojan horse. Again, linked with Marxism and communism. That's huge. In the education system, what's going on with the education system is very huge. War, our veterans, our armed forces, that's a huge topic of what's going on in our country. And the cultural division that's happening, calling other people, demonizing one side and the other, and all that's going on. People need to be aware of that. The criminal justice system and our medical system, just these are huge things that I'm going to be pretty much dedicating my life as a citizen of the country, doing whatever I can to help the quality of life. Stay tuned tomorrow now, as we, not now, but stay tuned tomorrow. Make sure to check us out. We'll have 3 city councilors on. Looking forward to that. So make sure to come. Not sure we'll get all your questions in, but they'll see your questions as they come up on the screen, and they'll be able to go back and watch the video again, see all the questions, and at least know the things that are important to you as a citizen of Greater Sudbury. And all those around the world who want to join us too for tomorrow's discussion are more than welcome. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. Have a great, wonderful Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.